Legend of Lizzie Borden, tonight, 10:30.
Gary Cochran, Bruce Roberts, and Phil Whitelaw with the weekend edition of Channel 2 News.
Good evening, I'm Steve Shepard for Gary Cochran. Most of Chicago's main streets are clear tonight, but some 3,000 city workers are scrambling to clean up tons and tons of snow on side streets and residential areas. The workers began fanning out this morning, and the plan is for them to continue the operation right through until the rush hour traffic begins on Monday morning. But Mother Nature could change those plans. A new storm is on the way, and here's Phil Whitelaw to tell us about it. Phil?
Steve, the winter storm warning remains in effect for tonight and on through tomorrow. The brunt of it to be felt tomorrow. Winds will pick up by then to 25-mile-an-hour gusts or more. That blowing around an additional 4 or more inches of snow, making it very unpleasant. And we'll have the complete picture later on in the news.
Well, in spite of those new snow warnings, Chicagoans made the most of today's relatively warm temperatures and went about business almost as usual. Shoppers were out in force along Michigan Avenue, and stores, restaurants, and theaters began to make up for lost business. Traffic moved better than it had in days, and CTA buses were running at fairly regular intervals. City residents seemed happy with the way the weather had changed.
Well, today is a good day. We just wanted to get out. We've been in the apartment for a whole week. Just wanted to get out and have some fun.
Well, I was shoveling the week before, and I didn't like that. At least now I don't have to shovel.
Well, there's all that weight that I got.
But the digging out efforts continue, and they may become even more burdensome by tomorrow. Today began the city's big push to clear up side streets, but Renee Ferguson reports many Chicagoans felt the way to get the job done was to do it themselves.
For the first time in more than a week, Chicagoans were beginning to see cement. The majority of the city's main streets are now clear. The city officials promised to spend their snow removal efforts on the side streets today, but many area residents just gave up on that promise and started their own snow removal program. At Agaty, just off Sheridan Road, residents were using picks and shovels to clear what appeared to be 2 weeks' worth of ice and snow. You mean to tell me there hasn't been a snow plow on this street?
No. The residents in the area have been over here digging it out.
I wonder why.
They don't care. Anytime you can fly over the city in a helicopter and look down on the snow instead of walking down the street with the people that live and vote for you and pay taxes in the city, then, you know, who are you?
Where do you think the city snowplow is?
I haven't seen one yet.
You think it's going to ever come to your street?
He might, but I don't think so.
Is that why you're out here trying to get the street cleared up?
Yeah, I got my car back there. I got to get it in. Otherwise, they tow it.
Junior Terrace on the city's north side had been plowed, once by the city and once by a private contractor paid by residents. There was still plenty of digging to be done.
This is going to take a long time. There's nowhere to put it. I've been shoveling from here all the way over there. It's tiring. It's going to take a long, long time, about 3 or 4 hours. Car won't start, but got to get it out eventually.
By Monday, according to a City Hall spokesman, Chicago's side streets will be at least passable, with a little help, that is, from Mother Nature, Snow Command, and some impatient residents who refuse to wait for the plow to come to them. Renee Ferguson, Channel 2 News.
Several independent aldermen lashed out at Mayor Bolandic yesterday for the way the city has handled the snow removal efforts. 42nd Ward Alderman Martin Oberman explained why today.
The big problem is getting a plan ready, and unless the mayor is a political incompetent, he'll have a plan ready for next year. I have to believe this is very politically damaging to the mayor because the average citizen can see the incompetence and the lack of planning. You don't have to be a genius to know that we could have done a much better job than we've done.
Oberman, who is from the 43rd Ward, did say, however, that the cleanup operation went very well today in his North Side Ward and that streets there should be in pretty good shape by tomorrow. Coming up next, Carol?
The forecast for getting around in the Chicago area tomorrow and Monday.
We still do not know yet if Chicago public schools will reopen on Monday. School Superintendent Joseph Hannon is expected to make an announcement tomorrow afternoon on the status of school in Chicago on Monday. When we return, a report on a tenement fire in New Jersey.
Mayor Bolandic promised that these streets would be clean by the end of the weekend. These people, as many other Chicagoans, were outside to make sure that promise would be kept. Joe Kish is an employee for the city's Streets and Sanitation Department and is working as a supervisor on one of the snow removal crews. He told me that a lot of the problems are not from the snow, but from the people.
The main problem is that the people don't cooperate with us. They keep coming out in groves, and they think when they see that big machine coming, it's God coming down the street. They don't know that it's there to help them. I don't know what else we can tell them. We tell them not to throw the snow into the street, but they keep constantly throwing it in the street.
Like that man right there.
That gentleman right there, he's just doing it. All he's doing is creating more problems for us.
So you come clear the streets and they come and shovel more snow out in the street?
So they're making double work for us. That's why it's taking us twice as long to work.
I know there are a lot of side streets that still need to be plowed, but progress is being made. Even though it's slow, it's still being made. For instance, early this morning, the playground here at Jameson Elementary School was plowed out so the people in this area could have a place to park their cars.
Snow removal crews will continue to work around the clock. If you're wondering when they'll get to your street, don't, because that's as predictable as the weather. Sylvia Cisneros, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
And back to our live shot, State Street in Wacker at this hour. And if you will be traveling in areas outside of the city of Chicago, the word from the Illinois Department of Transportation is that all roads are passable, but that caution is still recommended. Most of the roads are plowed, but in some stretches there is naturally slush, and it can be slippery, and it will get icy as the temperature drops. Well, it's relatively good news, as is word from Governor Thompson.
The spot shut down last night because of icing, but it's open for business today. All 280 cars normally scheduled for Saturday service were operating. Hopefully, that's the way it will be tomorrow and next week as well. We could get more snow, and it could cause more trouble, however. As it is, the CTA is just thankful for today, warily watching, they say, the weather and what will happen tomorrow.
We have made tremendous recovery today. Our main effort has been to get the system going. We spared no expense at any time to give every effort we could to get her going. We'll add up the bill later. We won't know that for a month or so. We're looking for a pretty good rush hour Monday morning. We won't be fully up to normal. We won't have Evanston through service. We will have service to all our stations, including those in Evanston. Evanston passengers will be changing at Howard. Skokie Swift is running and will be running. All our other lines will be running right through to their terminals. All again, barring any further severe snow.
Other commuter trains should be pretty much back to normal tomorrow, except for the South Shore line, which won't run until Monday. Amtrak says it will be putting extra trains on. More were needed today. And O'Hare is getting back to normal with all but one runway operating. Up in Lake County and around Joliet, the roads are icing up, but for the rest of the area, streets that have been cleared are merely wet.
Now run the risk of losing state aid. The Cook County Superintendent of Schools, Richard Martwick, is asking Illinois School Superintendent Joseph Cronin to declare Act of God Day so the schools won't lose any funds. Martwick says he believes there is precedent for such a ruling. Many schools in the Chicago area are hoping to reopen on Monday, and that includes the Chicago public school system. It all depends on the weather. School Superintendent Joseph Hannon is expected to make an announcement about the schools tomorrow, as are the heads of other area school systems. Coming up next, Jim Hill with the full weather forecast.
This last Saturday could now go home. And for many, it'll be the very first time this week. Pat Arnold, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Showers off and on. We super compared to 78. Well, we weren't that bad. 34 and 35 for the highs in Chicago today, all around the area. That's the first time this year, the first time in 3 weeks that we've been above freezing and allowed about an inch of snow to melt, and it also saved us from a potentially fairly serious ice storm. The low-pressure system that started out in the we started picking it up, or the forecasters did a couple of days ago, heading for the Texas Panhandle. Instead of coming up the alley, the Terror Alley, the Ohio River Valley, the storm never gained the strength, or has not, up until this afternoon, had not gained the strength, and it moved almost due east into the southern states, specifically into Mississippi. But now, that little storm that was not very intense and not very well developed has grown into a full-fledged winter storm and is affecting adversely most of the eastern half of the United States. The track that it takes now is all important to what we get in the Chicago area. It looks like it's heading up through Ohio now, heading on a northeaster track, and we're going to be right on the western fringe of the heavier snow. In other words, the heavier snow should be to the east of us. We can get 3, 4, 5. If the track shifted just a little bit to the east, however, we would get merely flurries. The best bet right now is for 3 to 4 inches of fresh snow, but the problem tomorrow will be blowing and drifting snow. It all adds up to a winter storm warning for the rest of tonight. Freezing drizzle, very light stuff until a little bit after midnight, and then snow beginning a little after midnight. Winds increasing, low temperature 25 tomorrow morning. And for the day Sunday, a winter storm warning continued. Travel hazard during the day. 4 inches of new snow is the best bet. Blowing and drifting snow. It'll be a northeast wind. The east-west routes will be the most seriously affected. Tomorrow's high just a shade below the thawing level of 30 degrees. Pete, that's the outlook right now.
Thank you, Jim.
After shoveling off the top layers, either sweep or, with this wet snow, somehow push the snow from the top of your roof. If you didn't take time to put storm windows up or caulk, there's only 2 things you can do now. You either cover the windows in newspaper or towels to keep the heat in, or some contractors suggested visqueen or embossed drop cloth put over the windows. Use masking tape on the sides. Don't use nails. Just wreck your window frame if you do. A lot of the leaking people are experiencing is caused by ice on the gutters backing up under the roof tiles and leaking down inside of walls. Clean out those gutters. Knock off the smaller icicles with a rake. If the icicles don't come off easily, use the hot water. You might pull your gutter off. A little salt in the gutters will cut down on future ice accumulation. There are electric cords for gutters, but they cost around $350. It's a good idea to have a humidifier in your home in the wintertime to put moisture in the air for your respiratory system and for your furniture. But make sure it's not set any higher than 30 or 40. More than that will put too much moisture in the home, which causes condensation on the ceiling and on the windows. In your furnace, normally you should change the filter once a month. But in these extreme conditions, you should check it every 2 weeks. Make sure your registers are clear, too. Since you're liable if someone falls on your property, be sure to shovel your steps and walk. I thought salt should be put down, but several contractors say no, it eats away the cement. They all agree that sand is best. This is Karen Kalish, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Yeah, I feel terrible, lousy day, and I'm not going to play today.
Students are to report at 10 a.m. and schools will be dismissed at their regular time, but no schools will be dismissed any later than 3 p.m. All staff will report to their duty stations at the regular time. There'll be no breakfast program and a limited number of lunches will be served tomorrow. All playgrounds and stadia will be opened. There will be no school bus service available the first day, Monday. Parents are encouraged to make arrangements to transport their children to special education programs, access to excellence, permissive transfer programs, and all other programs where normal bus service is usually given.
He said school roofs have been inspected and are considered safe from any risk of collapse, and he offered some advice to teachers.
Wherever necessary or wherever possible, carpools should be used. Most of the streets going into the schools will be passable, but there'll be absolutely no parking on any of the side streets. All the parking lots are not plowed. There's limited parking, and there'll be no parking anywhere in the streets. In some instances, people will have to park 2 or 3 blocks from the school.
Dr. Hannon also said that schools will not lose any state funds because of lost class time.
The city's Snow Command team has been augmented by about 500 paid volunteers who, along with this equipment, have been imported from all over the Midwest. This 18-ton front-end loader is being operated by a highly skilled 97-pound woman. Norma Lemoyne, along with her husband and daughter, drove the rig to Chicago yesterday from Brookston, Indiana, near Lafayette. They each work a 12-hour shift. Norma's biggest problem today has been people.
There's people just crawling all over the place. They're just in the way.
They're getting in your way?
Well, it's quite an obstacle. I'm so afraid. Little kids and stuff, they stand in the snowbanks and people just stand there and watch them. I'm just sure I'm going to bury one soon, you know, but Other than that, there really isn't too much trouble with parked cars, but...
You getting the parked cars out okay?
They are now. It's been a hassle up to now getting a tow truck.
Tow trucks were on hand to move snowbound cars from along Paulina, move them out of the way. But on this day, in this neighborhood, they were returned to the curb after the plows moved through. Of course, not all the side streets are in such good shape, like this one. A simple one-lane swath has effectively opened these neighborhoods for the first time in a week. The Snow Command crews plan to stay on the job until 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. And later on tonight, city officials will evaluate their work to find out if indeed they were successful in clearing about 2,700 miles of secondary streets around Chicago. Emery?
To no more snow, this morning's rush was the smoothest for a weekday since the blizzard of '79 first hit. But there were still problems. The CTA had 70% of its trains running. All lines operated except the Evanston Express. Most ran close to schedule. Many were jammed. Some passengers rode outside, refusing to fight the crowds.
Hey, wait a minute.
Push in more.
Last week I rode on the outside of the trains. Yeah, it's better. Not by much, though.
Very slow. They stopped in the middle of Evanston and didn't go for like 15 minutes, so I'm late for my appointment.
Commuter railroads were running full schedules too, but most had some delays. The west line of the Milwaukee Road was 20 minutes behind. Illinois Central Gulf trains ran 10 to 20 minutes late. Some riders there were especially dissatisfied.
It was more crowded than it was last week when they had maybe 6 to 10 cars on. And today there were only 2 cars when they were really packed.
We waited 45 minutes for a train. Saturday and Sunday they were running perfectly every half hour, 4 and 5 trains. This is awful. This is a mess.
Those transferring to CTA buses found them crowded too. But generally, commuters were in a better mood. After all, Mother Nature cooperated with above zero temperatures, and the trains and buses eventually showed up. Bonnie DeVries, News Center 5.
Well, Joel, all I can tell you, if last week was the week that was, this week has got to be the week for patience. Here at CTA Control Center, while things aren't rosy, what we can say is that the commuter picture seems to be coming into focus. CTA is still experiencing delays on their lines, rapid transit lines, as well as with the buses. But the people who are riding them are the ones who won't even hear this, except for the people who are at home waiting for them. CTA, I'm told, has improved the intervals that the trains are going in and out of the terminals. And there is a skip plan in effect. That means that A and B trains on the major routes will alternate stops, which should alleviate some of the passenger overload. And I'm also told that the Evanston Express is not operating, but the Skokie Swift is. People will find that most of the Evanston branch lines are too. Well, we did have a delay this afternoon, shortly after 3, when a passenger unfortunately had a heart attack. He was at the Jefferson Park and Belmont station, and he couldn't be moved until the paramedics arrived. That, of course, was unforeseeable. But things are moving on that line right now.
Commissioner as loyal and honest. His loyalty to Mayor Daley and every citizen of Chicago and to his friends, but most of all to the underdog. The loser. Bob was loyal. Honest. Bob was honest to the highest and to the lowest. When you come out of Bob Quinn's office, you know exactly where you stood. Following Mass, the mourners stood in silence as Lieutenant Eddie Gavin rang the bell for the last fire call. John Drummond, Channel 2 News.
Snow removal effort is a success, that almost all main and secondary roads can now bear the brunt of heavy traffic again. At this hour, the city is deciding if it will continue its tow and plow program into the night.
Commuter
commuters queued up apprehensively this morning for what the CTA billed as the best day of commuter service since the blizzard. At the Forest Park station, L trains pulled up on the average of once every 15 minutes. But that promptness was misleading as we boarded the train and rode on further down the line. Express service, according to a conductor, had been eliminated, and that meant A trains were coming to a stop at each station. That resulted in overcrowding on most trains. CTA officials said delays were inevitable because the Ls were being used by more commuters whose cars were still snowed under. The heavy crowds took more time to board at each station, and that increased delays. Still, some commuters and conductors said things were looking better.
It came more frequently. I didn't have to wait a half an hour for it this time.
Like you did last week?
Yeah, right, yeah. And then it was jammed when we got on, you know. So today I'm getting a seat.
The people are taking it a little better. You know, they expected the worst, and I think they got the better half today. It's a little bit better today.
One CTA maintenance official estimated that at least 20% of the cars on the line were still being repaired. But CTA officials were still predicting service would be back to normal by Tuesday morning's rush hour. The Lake Dan Ryan line wasn't the only CTA line with rush hour problems. Frank Courier has that story.
Everything is beautiful in the Lord's way, like a sunny day or a ride on CTA.
No, it's not Tony Bennett. It's Don Skowronek, a CTA ticket agent who for a fleeting moment can pretend that nothing is wrong at the Jefferson Park station. And these are Monday morning commuters just arriving at the station, and they are in for a little surprise. Once again, the L platform was overloaded with people who just assumed that since it didn't snow over the weekend, that CTA service would be back to normal. After all, just across the expressway, the Chicago and Northwestern was rolling along. Why was this L stopped and going nowhere?
The CTA, the way they're running the trains, not running it on time. I don't think the weather has anything to do with it.
There either isn't a train, it's overpacked, the equipment breaks down. It's ridiculous.
So this has nothing to do with the winter time?
This has nothing to do with the winter. It has nothing to do with the cold.
CTA still blames delays on mechanical breakdowns. A third of the train fleet remains down for repairs. The happiest people were those already inside the train, and though not moving, they could warm up. And as this passenger seized a peanut butter and banana sandwich from her lunch bag, and as Mickey Mouse dangled in the window of the CTA control booth, upstairs, Don Skowronek was still singing from behind his ticket window.
You'll have a beautiful day riding CTA.
And here's where we stand on L service around the city tonight. The CTA tells us no major delays on any of the L lines. However, intervals between trains are not what they should be. They're running a bit slow. Two reasons for this, CTA cites to us. First of all, 25% of his fleet of trains down under repair right now. And secondly, so many more motorists who normally would be taking the car to work or trains. Evanston Express still plagued with problems. Tracks number 1 and 4 snowed in a full 9 days after the storm. So the bottom line to all this, I guess, is tomorrow morning, if you do take the L to work, allow about an extra 30 minutes. Bill and Harry.
You don't need a transistor either on that particular car.
I guess not.
Teachers were on the slow side getting to school this morning, but the availability of parking once they got there depended on whether the school had a playground. Bryn Mawr Elementary School on the south side had been plowed out for emergency neighborhood parking, and teachers arriving this morning found students playing on the towering snow piles and plenty of parking space.
Parking lot was very good.
Were you surprised?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was very surprised that the streets were as well as they were, kept as well.
I think they did the best they could. It was a severe storm, and I think everyone pitched in and did as much as they possibly could.
As for the children, they were in good spirits at the 10 a.m. bell, though the predictable composition, How I Spent the Blizzard of '79, might have dropped their enthusiasm a notch or two.
I'm sure you did something other than watch TV. I promise you can. I hope you did.
While Bryn Mawr Elementary got classes underway with a minimum of difficulty, tempers were short at Lindblom Technical High School, where the streets should have been cleared this morning, but they weren't, and teachers were tardy getting to class. Despite requests from Superintendent Joseph Hannon that teachers form carpools, many at Lindblom tried to drive and found the streets impassable.
It was our understanding that when we got here this morning that the school lots and everything will be open for us to get here and get in. But it was a great catastrophe this morning, I mean, because teachers were lined up all up and down the streets, and there was no way to get into the school.
We've had to park away from the school on Damon, which is about two blocks away from school. And many of our staff and students have taken public transportation to school today.
Decision makers now must determine whether the extra week off will mean shorter vacations this spring or an extended school year. But at this point, Friday, January 26th will be a holiday with Records Day scheduled, moved back from Thursday. And the new semester will get underway on Monday, January 29th. Tom Korzenowski, Channel 2 News.
And on the far south side,
say no one is perfect. But I, for one, look back on Robert Quinn's life and times as a distinguished and dedicated career of firefighting. There were many fires which seemed somewhat insignificant, and reporters would be surprised when Quinn showed up in his battered white helmet. Needless to say, he never missed a big one. And as for ordering the civil defense sirens to sound off when the White Sox won the pennant of '59, it may have been a mistake with purpose. It proved to everyone that very few people paid any attention to those sirens. And if you wanted to prove that point, what more appropriate time to turn them on? And that was Bob Quinn, one of the greatest firemen who ever lived, Joe.
Going to continue because we have another winter storm watch for the Chicago area, something we really don't need, but it's quite possible by this time tomorrow night we could have picked up another 4 or 5 inches of snow. Already this season we now have had 66.3 inches of snow, and we have a lot of winter to go. Last year, remember, we set that all-time record with 82.4 inches, and with all that winter ahead of us, I think we're going to make very short work of last year's record. Something I'm really not looking forward to. Let's take a look at the radar, and we can find that there is nothing in the way of any significant rain or snow or sleet or anything showing up right now, and we don't expect any for at least several hours. Here's what we have on the national map right now. We have a developing storm system which is out here in the Plain States. This is really the biggest low-pressure center, and that's drawing more moisture up from the Gulf of Mexico, and moisture, of course, is what you have to have if you want to have any kind of a decent snowstorm. Well, this storm looks like it's going to take a track that'll move it down through Oklahoma and Arkansas, then up through southern Illinois and Indiana, and then on up into Ontario in the next 24 to 48 hours. As it makes that little trip, there's going to be some snow and maybe some heavy snow in Illinois and Iowa and southern Wisconsin, Indiana, with lesser amounts up here in Michigan. So be on the lookout for that snow. It doesn't look like it's going to start here in the Chicago area until about, maybe midnight or 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And then the heavy snow, if we get it at all, the heavy snow probably won't start until sometime late during the day tomorrow. Normal temperatures in Chicago at this time of year would be a high of 31 degrees and a nighttime low of 17 degrees. And here's a little ray of hope. Starting now, that average temperature starts this very, very slow climb towards springtime. Now, if we could only get average temperatures. Right now, we have temperatures a little below average, mostly in the 20s. Glenview, 24, 22 at Yorkville, 23 at Lockport, 22 degrees at Gary, Indiana. And we do have that winter storm watch tomorrow for northern Illinois, northwest Indiana. Some heavy snow is forecast for Wisconsin, and as we say, some lighter amounts over in Michigan. It looks like it's going to be kind of a miserable day tomorrow for driving, for walking, and for snow shoveling. I'd probably have to pick up an extra buck shoveling Curtis's front sidewalk. Well, listen, you do what you can these days. Humidity 81%, south winds at 12 miles an hour, barometer falling but very slowly at 29 and 94 inches. High today 24 after a low this morning of 11. Sunrise and sunset tomorrow, there it is, and the precipitation amount in the past 24 hours just to trace. A quick look at the satellite photograph of the United States shows lots of snow and snow cover. Northern part of the country, all up and through here. Some of that is just snow on the ground, but there is some snow falling in parts of the Dakotas and Minnesota and Nebraska and Iowa at this hour. Now then, at 6 o'clock in the Chicago area, these are the current temperatures. 22 at Midway, 23 at the Loop and Lakefront. O'Hare Field reporting 24 at this hour. Tonight, cloudy. A chance of snow beginning around midnight. We'll have an overnight low tonight of about 22 degrees. And tomorrow, we have that winter storm watch for the Chicago area. Snow, maybe some heavy snow starting. The heavy snow could start about 11 or 12 o'clock, sometime around noon. High temperature tomorrow, about 28 degrees, and some snow continuing off and on tomorrow night. And probably ending sometime on Wednesday. It'll be cloudy on Wednesday. High temperature of about 23 degrees. And looks like this winter is going to last right up until the 4th of July.
And you call it a carnival, John.
What do I know?
Road conditions are finally getting back to normal, but serious storm-related problems remain because of snow-covered roofs all over the area. Chicagoans have already filed over $20 million in claims for losses to garages, roofs, porches, and automobiles. And with the constant threat of more snow and the added weight, and with the threat of a thaw and water seeping in under the eaves, those losses could go even higher. On Saturday night, Lionel Berriman's garage roof collapsed, demolishing his car trapped inside. Fortunately, his homeowner's insurance policy will pay for the garage and his car insurance for the car.
I had a contract out about 5 years ago to remodel it, and it was in pretty good shape. So I wasn't thinking that this would happen to it because I had, in 5 years' time on repairs, it was pretty good shape, and I thought it would withstand this amount of snow, but evidently I couldn't take it.
After the garage collapse, Mr. Berriman decided to clear the snow from the roof of his home to prevent a similar collapse there. Insurance companies and roofing contractors recommend that you clear your roof with extreme care to prevent both personal injury and tears in the roofing surface. They also suggest you consider placing gutter cables in your gutters to help clear them of ice.
If someone does have a loss or suspects, say, a garage cracking of rafters, that type of situation, most important is remove the vehicles. And possibly any items that may be in the garage that could be damaged in the event of a collapse. Turn off all electric to the garage. Turn off any water if you would have it into the garage.
Almost all deluxe, multi-peril, or broad-form homeowners insurance policies cover storm-related damage. Because of the severity of the blizzard of '79, most insurance companies have added extra staff to speed the claims processing procedure. Jackie Adams, Channel 2 News.
And to add to all our weather woes, the temperature is expected to drop to 0 and below tonight. It's beginning to look like we can't win. Chicago's public schools closed early today. They will be closed all day tomorrow for the students, but teachers are being asked to report. The reason for the shutdown is worry about snow-laden roofs. All Catholic elementary schools in the city will be closed tomorrow, also for the same reason. Officials want to check on the roofs. Check on long-suffering commuters. They found all kinds of misery, foul-ups, all kinds of trouble, especially on the CTA. Along with the morning situation, we'll have a live report from CTA headquarters on the commuting problems right now. Also tonight, we'll report on something that has nothing to do with snow. Sears Roebuck and Company today filed a class action.
For many Chicagoans, that first glimpse out the window this morning revealed all the magic and beauty of new fallen snow. But such fantasies are short-lived when the issue becomes getting to work. Living close in has an advantage on days like this. It's just a matter of bundling up. And those who did discovered traveling in groups is best, since misery loves company. For those living farther out in the suburbs, commuter trains were running. Despite the crowds, the poor visibility, and blowing snow, there were only minor delays.
You know, I come from Belmet, and they have a terrific bus service. Wasn't too late, 5 minutes late, and the train was about 10 minutes late today.
Sweeping out switches and cleaning snow out of switches, but we did pretty good.
For many, perhaps too many, there was no choice. Rush hour along the expressways was a nightmare. Motorists finally gave up jockeying for position as windshields iced up and cars rear-ended each other in clusters. In the middle of it all, there was even time to get out and brush off. And not so far away, the snowplows were fighting for survival. Commuters who left the car at home had other choices of getting about. Surprisingly, the L was running here at Jefferson Park. Not right on schedule, but nonetheless moving. Apparently, many people, fed up with train delays, tried the last resort today, the bus. There are 2,000 of them in the city, but never, it seems, enough at the right time, and not a pretty picture for those left huddled and waiting. For them, this morning was a monumental test of tolerance.
I call and complain. They says, well, we can't do anything about it. Why should there be 6 buses at once and then nothing for an hour?
I'm trying to fill in the best I can do.
Just get one bus to go that way. Just one, that's all. That's all I asked for. It's worse than last Monday. Much worse.
Depending on your point of view, it might have been worse than Monday, or any day. This newest snowfall caused delays throughout the mass transit system. The worst were on the north side, along CTA's Howard Street L. More on that now from Burley Hines.
Northside commuters were angry and confused during the early rush hour when they learned that the new snow had thrown the CTA further off course. At the Wilson Rapid Transit Station, passengers rushed through the turnstiles, only to wait for more than an hour for a train for the loop. The platform was crowded with passengers, some northbound, some southbound. One train going north passed without stopping, already filled with riders. Then it was learned that the Howard extension had been shut down. All trains north were stopping at Wilson and then going back south.
I hiked over here from the Lawrence Avenue L station about 15 minutes ago.
You've been waiting ever since?
Yes.
Think you're gonna get a train today?
I hope so.
The first southbound I'm getting on, I'm going to San Diego.
A CTA motorman loaded passengers on one train, explaining that it was an express to the loop.
702, you will run express to Chicago Avenue. 702, the next stop on the southbound, the late A train will be Chicago Avenue.
Then another train stopped. Passengers crowded in the doorways, causing the train to delay its departure. Commuters were dismayed to learn also that the Evanston Express is still out of service, and so is the Skokie Swift. And there was no shuttle early to carry commuters between Wilson and the Howard station. At the Howard station, a CTA employee shouted himself hoarse, advising passengers to catch buses if they were going north.
I'm sorry, folks, there are no trains out of Howard Street. Either way, you'll have to take buses.
Cursing the elements, the passengers loaded the buses. Meanwhile, at the Linden station in Wilmette, workers used a train equipped with a makeshift plow of plywood in efforts to clear the heavily packed ice and snow from the tracks. From Wilmette, Burley Hines, Channel 2 News.
20 to 40 minutes or more on some of the lines. And of course, the South Shore is still running on a limited basis. Maybe they should rename it the South Shore Limited. Sections of the roof fell first and took some parts of new sections with them. Track officials say the roof collapse probably will not affect the Friday opening of a recreational vehicle show at the track. It will be held inside other buildings in the track complex.
To abandoned cars and drifting snow. And all roads in northern Cook County are snow-packed and hazardous. The dropping temperatures are making the snow-melting rock salt unusable. It loses its effectiveness at below 20 degrees.
Which can land and take off there. Officials say snow removal operations are underway, but at the moment only about 20 planes an hour can make it in and out. Schedules have been cut back accordingly. A spokesman says of the planes landing and taking off, most are sticking to that new rescheduling.
An architect and hero of the Dominican Revolution in the 1960s. Now he, his M16, and 2 aides stay aboard the Samala, showing the Dominican Republic's involvement, while Weber and his divers recover the treasure. On this trip, the Samala and her crew are protected by a Dominican Navy gunboat, which is usually stationed over the wreck site while the Samala returns to port in Santo Domingo to unload treasure and take on supplies. Maneuvering these vessels Bank Reef is tricky. They have to be guided by divers in smaller reef boats. The reefs, some of which stick out of the water, ripped the hull of the Concepcion 300 years ago and could do the same thing now to the Samala and the Navy craft. One of the reef boats takes the NBC crew and special underwater videotape equipment to the site of the wreck. In the water, cameraman Craig White makes final checks on the equipment before swimming to the wreck site. The ocean has destroyed the galleon, but this is where it lay. Coral formations spread their branches over the divers working below. They're digging the treasure out of the reef. They're mining it. silver coins, black dots against the coral. Other divers scan the bottom with metal detectors. After 300 years, there's nothing left of the wooden hull and superstructure of the Concepcion. All that is left is the treasure of silver coins and artifacts covered with tarnish and coral. Weber signals for the camera to follow him into a coral canyon. There's a major find. Out of the murk comes a silver plate. A diver places a handful of coins in the plate and Weber takes it to the surface. Over the sounds of a Venturi air pump, those on the surface are heard cheering. Although Weber and his corporation, Sequest International, refused to comment on the total worth of the treasure, it's obviously substantial. Estimates have ranged from $40 million to $900 million. For Bert Weber and Sequest and Colonel Montezerachi in the Dominican Republic these days, every day is Christmas Day. Michael Silver, NBC News, off the coast of the Dominican Republic.
Contributed to thousands of this station's programs. Bill Robbins, a television director who frequently directed this news broadcast, passed away suddenly last night at the age of 54. Bill began his career at WBBM TV in 1953.
Certainly is a cloud, so I guess somewhere, there must be a silver lining. And I suppose if we think hard enough, we can find it. Let's see. First of all, I guess you could call this perfect excuse weather. In other words, you can show up for work late, nobody says anything, or you can cancel appointments you never wanted to keep anyway. Another silver lining is the fact that Chicago is known for being a city that, because of dogs, you got to keep looking down all the time. Well, it's not that they're still not doing their duty. The fact is, it's just buried. We won't see it until spring, and even by then, poof, like magic, the stuff is gone. Another one of my favorite things about this kind of weather is the fact that, well, very few creeps come out. I don't know, I guess they must go and hole up somewhere with their portable radios until it clears. And one other thing, listen, no motorcycles. I actually feel a little bit richer right now. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that the mailman isn't showing up with the bills. But perhaps the nicest silver lining of all is the fact that our old snow is starting to look pretty dirty. This new one, painted away the scrunch. No doubt about it. That's the nicest silver lining. Frank Matthey, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Thank you.